Welcome back to The Next Step, the podcast where we explore the real-life journeys of people living with limb loss and limb difference. I'm your host, Kevin Gray. I'm a bilateral amputee and co-founder of Limb Loss Connection, and I'm so glad that you're joining us today. Today's guest, David Hershberger, has one of the most powerful and hard-earned stories of resilience we've come across. His story started in 1998 with what seemed like a freak accident in his own driveway. One that would lead to over a decade of surgeries, pain, braces, and eventually a life-altering decision to amputate his leg. David's now 67 years old. He's retired and living in Arizona. He's been through addiction, recovery, marriage, multiple careers, and even helps lead amputee support groups. His perspective is seasoned, honest, and deeply valuable to anyone navigating the path of limb loss. We talk about the years leading up to his amputation, the decision to finally let go of the non-functional limb, his rehab process, managing phantom pain, and why peer support is so critical to this journey. David, welcome to The Next Step.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me, Kevin.
Yeah, great. So I know that you, it's been a while, it's been a month or so that since we last spoke, and I know you went on a bit of a trip. Now, where'd you go again? Remind me?
Well, we had a land sea package in Italy. So we landed in Rome, had 11 ports that we were on ship and visited. Then we landed in Venice, spent 3 days in Venice and went home.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Anything that you would say that was your favorite part of the trip?
Wow, there were many favorites.
Yeah.
Rome is a wonderful city with lots of unique architecture and history.
Right.
Same thing with Pompeii in Sicily. The and who can not say anything bad about Venice?
Yeah.
It's fascinating the way people get around on a boat, and everything is done on water.
Yeah, that's fascinating, right? Your wife must have really enjoyed it.
We both did.
Yeah.
It was definitely, you get up every morning and you have an agenda, and you know go and conquer.
Yeah, nice. Hey, David, you live in a pretty nice place of the world in Arizona now yourself. Are you in Scottsdale or whereabouts are you?
I'm directly in Phoenix. We're in Central
Oh,
Phoenix.
Phoenix. Yeah. Okay. Well, listen.
We're going to welcome our first. Should be our first 100 day
Oh,
temperature.
right. Yeah. Yeah. Good.
Yeah, we're getting close to summer, so
Yeah. Well, listen, well, you're an active guy, so you'll be playing some golf and swimming, I bet, coming up. We're going to talk a little bit about that later. Um,
great.
but let's just back up and start from the beginning. We'll go back to 1998, if you can think back that far, and remember what happened. But I'm sure you can. There was an accident, kind of a freak accident in your driveway. Tell us what happened. What was going on?
Well, had to take my young son to a basketball game. He plays uh, on a league, and he was only what, 6 at the time, yeah, 6 or 7. So we were driving along and seeing that he doesn't have a shirt and for the game. So turn around, get home, park the car in the garage, and I run upstairs for the shirt. Well, a few minutes later, he came through the door and said, "Dad, the car's rolling down the driveway."
Oh no.
So, and this is a 2-story house, so I ran down the stairs, lost my footing, and tried to jump out of the fall. And I landed on a tile floor,
Ouch.
ankle first. So um, it it did quite a bit of damage. And as the paramedics put it, is, you know, that car didn't hit anything but a bush. That leg of yours, it's it's pretty messed up.
Yeah, it was
So
like completely turned around the way you described it to me before, right?
correct. I was able to see the sole of my shoe,
Wow.
just looking down at my foot. So it was it was a fracture, shattered fracture of the tibia and fibula.
Okay.
It was all adrenaline at that point. So
Yeah, I bet. Like, well, you're wondering if the car is gonna hit someone, never mind, yeah,
correct.
the car or
It's
something like
that
that.
it's that nanosecond of a parent's life that you
Yeah,
don't know what's going to happen and you're fearful and you're just trying to see if
yeah.
you can correct the situation before something bad happens.
And it's amazing, like all the people I'm talking to, the amputees, and what's happened to them. It's that split second, or that, had I only left a minute earlier, maybe this wouldn't have happened, and
Correct.
motorcycle accidents to tripping and falling and hurting yourself. Everybody kind of ties that in. It's like, geez, I wish I would have just waited another minute or so. But listen, anyway, you had a really bad fractured ankle, completely turned around. Did the early medical team approach the treatment well for you? And what was the recovery like the next few months?
Well, the next few months was, after they put Humpty Dumpty back together, um, it was, rigorous PT and, being off work, being on crutches, not being ambulatory as much as I would like to be. Um, but, after a period of time when we thought it all healed and we're going into the 6 to 7 month period, we found that there was, the bone was not fully healed.
Right,
So they decided to put me in a brace that went from my knee all the way to my heel of my shoe. And I spent, many years in that brace. Uh, through a decade, I've went through, 4 additional surgeries.
wow,
So by the time I got to number 5, and this is 2010, um, it was to the point where, well, I'm done.
right.
It didn't heal. So I've researched quite a bit of what are the options. I got a second opinion from a surgeon. When you ask the doctor, okay, what would you do? And their reply was, I would remove it, and you have much better chances of being mobile and get back to life than you are now.
Yeah,
So that kind of stimulated a lot of thought.
the quality of life goes down when you're trying to nurse a wound, and it's dragging on for, well, you said years. Like when they amputated my toes, I tried to save my leg for almost 3 years, and those 3 years was like, why didn't I just remove the leg in the beginning? Because those 3 years were horrible.
Correct.
Out to nurses, and trying to it'd get infected, and then I'd have to get antibiotics, those types of things. Did you get any infections during the time that you were nursing it?
No infection, not infections, but a lot of scar tissue. When you open up the wounds that much, I mean, they tried to use uh, they did bone graft material, they did internal stimulators, external stimulators to try to move bone growth, but it just never materialized. So
Yeah,
there was always a gap in the X-ray of where the bone was, so nothing ever grew solid to maintain, you know, uh, movement and stability.
right, right. Hey, in the States, I've wondered this. In the States, do they tend to try to save the limb before So before like suggesting the amputation, or do you find that the doctors kind of go towards a full amputation of the leg and kind of coach you that way? Do you know?
Well, I don't have the direct answer on that one. I know in my uh, personal time, I mean, I was asked after my second surgery if that was something I would look at.
Right.
Um, and I went through that debate process. When you have to sit there and look at, I'm going to give somebody approval to remove my limb.
Yeah,
That's a big decision.
it really
Um, you
is.
know, I, and I really, my heart goes out to people who go through a trauma and wake up in a hospital and there's a limb removed. They
Yeah,
don't have a choice.
yeah,
I was blessed to at least given the option, taking the choice and making the decision on my timetable
yeah.
versus, a timetable that I didn't have any input in.
Yeah, and that's how I feel too. Talk to a lot of people that get sepsis and wake up, a couple months later and they have no limbs left.
Yeah,
Uh, car accidents and, they wake up in a coma and, they've lost a leg or whatever. Must be devastating to go do it that way. At least with us, we have a little bit of time to, think through it and try to start to accept it before it ever actually happens. What was the
true.
tipping point for you to say, okay, it is definitely time, go ahead and take the leg? What was really the tipping point at that point?
Well, I got involved with Amputee Coalition, which is an online, um, they had an online service, kind of like an online messenger like Facebook. And they're a nonprofit group here in the States. And I got into a conversation with a gentleman, and he said, you know, removing your leg is not going to change your life. And then I said, well, it must change your life. He says, no, you put your pants on one leg at a time, just as you do now.
Yeah,
It's just going to be a different process in which to get there. And that kind of brought some rationalization of, you know, instead of saying poor pitiful me, um, you know, I'm not the only one in this world that has that challenge. And if other people are doing it and they're living their lives to the fullest, then why can't I?
why can't I? Yeah. Well, I lost my leg in last February, and then I lost my second leg in June, and I really went like I was pretty down about the June one. I was very unexpected, and I was pretty sad in the hospital, and my surgeon came in and said, "Why are you so worried about this? I'm going to get you walking again." So after she said that to me, it was kind of a tipping point for me to say, why am I, she sees this all the time, so she's going to get me back up and walking. And why am I have no choice. I have to move forward. So I think everybody has that tipping point, when they decide that this is okay and go ahead and take the leg. Um, the Amputee Coalition, great place. They have their conference this year. Well, it's actually in January 2026 in Vegas. So I'm hoping to go to that. I hope you go to it. We can meet in person there, but they're a wonderful organization, and I'm glad you mentioned them. So listen, you make the decision of taking your leg. How long did it take to heal that leg before you started rehab?
I had, well, I went to a rehabilitation hospital. I was divorced and on my own at that time, so I had no one to really take care of me at home. So they sent me directly. I was 2 days in at the hospital, then shipped me over to the it was a uh, rehab hospital. So you're at PT 3 times a day. They get
Right.
you up. You're going to get up. You're going to get moving. Even if it's just you know stretching, if it's just any type of movement you can get, whether you're on your knees or on your back, being able to stretch and keep motion going so that there's no atrophy present during the healing process.
Right. Yeah, and they teach
And it
you
was,
how to. Well, go ahead.
and it was the best thing because once I had a block, a medical block put in um, that they provided me before surgery. So first 3 days, 4 days, I really didn't have any pain, but once that wore off.
Yeah.
So being in a rehab hospital, they can manage your pain better. It was controlled, and you had supervision the whole time. So,
Right.
and that was a real good benefit for me to have.
Yeah, I think if I think that's a good advice for anyone going through this is really think about where you're going to go to do your rehab because some are good, some are bad, right? Just like anything
Hmm.
else. And if you can get a good PT and an OT, that makes a world of difference. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You said you
And
weren't
once I
married.
was, yeah, once I got out, I was there for a month, then was, you know, then went home. Um, still in a cast at that point.
Yeah.
But but here's another thing that going back to our conversation of being prepared, I already prepared my house for being in a wheelchair, um, having everything accessible to me,
Okay,
um,
good.
being I knew that I was not going to be able to be as ambulatory as I'd like. So uh, and naturally, I had family members come over and so forth, but that was on a limited basis. But PT would come to the house, again, stretching exercises um, and lucky it was my left leg because I was still able to, go drive. I was
Right.
able to drive to my appointments and so forth. So
Yeah.
again, consider myself blessed and lucky.
Yeah, that's a big one, the independence and be able to drive and whatnot. I lost my license because they don't let you drive when you lose both your legs and you have to make some modifications to your vehicle. So I still haven't done that, David, and I really miss it. It's really put a change in my life here to not be able to get around. But we're dealing with it and whatnot. I was going to ask you who supported you through this whole process because you said you weren't married at that time. Did you have good support from friends and family throughout that?
I did. My work colleagues would stop in and see me and, make sure I was in the food business. So, they always brought me meals if I needed.
Oh, good.
Um, the, but, I think, again, knowing what I was going to do and putting my whole thought process into, all right, we're moving forward with this. You got to get to a point where you can return to a normal lifestyle, return to work, returning to some normalcy, even though that, the road ahead was you got to get fitted for your first socket and you got to get up on both legs. What is that going to feel like? And then, the training and the PT. And I was, again, maybe it's just the luck job of my PT I went to. This person was a trained Army vet that did his skill in the Army was working in the rehab hospital in San Antonio, where they manufactured a lot of these newer prosthetics
Right.
um, for the guys coming back from Iraq. And his military attitude, which I connected with easily because of my military background, um, and it's the drive that you're going to get past this.
Yeah.
Also,
Yeah.
also attended amputee support groups.
Mm.
Um, Again, it's being out with people that you know can know and talk to, and they probably have similar issues or concerns, and being able to share, being able to ask, well, how do you do this and how do you do that, and
Yeah.
what what process do you do to, do you like a pen? Do you like a vacuum? Getting their preferences and so forth, and getting all that in my head.
Right. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I started this limb loss connection. It's key. The connection is key. You've got to connect with people, that are going through the same thing that you're going through. And if you do, that kind of uplifts you, it supports you, it gets you through it, right? When I was in
Yes.
when I was in rehab, there was 2 or 3 people that I connected with really closely, but they were, a month ahead of me. So I was watching them, try their prosthetic on. I was watching them, adjust their sleeve. They were, and getting up and walking. And so I knew what was going to happen to me because I had the advantage of seeing them and connecting with them in advance, right? So something that comes up a lot on all these calls is phantom pain. And you've said that you've experienced that, and it's had some difficulty over the years with it. What's helped you manage it?
Well, phantom pains come at all different times of the day, um, and the night. Uh, yeah, it's one of those that I kind of get an inkling it's coming, somehow. I could still, I have senses that still feel like I have toes when I have phantom pain.
Yeah.
And, uh, you know, I don't want to take heavy medication. They wanted to prescribe gabapentin and so forth, but I would rather stick with, ibuprofen or something over the counter.
Yeah.
I just don't want to get into heavy medication because I don't need it.
It's a
Um,
dangerous slope, right? And
it is.
you didn't get any dependency on it when you did have to take it at the hospital, right? Some
Well, I took I took pain medication for years, and I had some dependency on it,
Yeah.
and I mean that kind of wreaked havoc with your mind and your abilities, and
Yeah.
uh, I knew it was happening, and I had to turn it around. I sought help, um, and being able to wean myself off of it, um,
I s-
and not have to depend on it.
yeah, I saw it a lot at the hospital that I was at. I'm like you. I took it, when I first had the surgery, I took it for a few weeks because the pain is, you can't live with the pain. There's a lot of pain. But I said to myself, I can't keep doing this because I felt like I was becoming dependent on it, and I stepped away from it. But I saw a lot of guys. To be honest with you, I think when they walked out, they were hooked on it. To be honest with
Yeah.
you, really hard. Eventually, you stepped away from it. That's good. I'm happy
Mhm.
about that. Um, you travel a lot, David. I think, and even during your recovery, you were traveling. What was it like to, navigate the airport, and you had work responsibilities for travel? How did you manage all your physical condition and, get around? What was that like for you?
Well, during surgeries, I mean, I'd go through airports. I got to know that, you got to ask for assistance. Don't be afraid. They can wheelchair you to and from your um, from the ticket counter to the gate. Um, I was very ambulatory with crutches. I'm so glad when they came out with knee scooters. Boy, those were a magic invention,
Yeah.
because I was able to just rest my knee on the knee scooter, and I could scoot through the airport pretty easily. But getting used to TSA was a challenge. I had some very frustrating times with TSA.
Yeah.
Um, to the point, it's like, here, hold my leg, and I'll go through the thing. You get frustrated, just take it off and hand it to them, and they get the point.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't have to come to that.
Yeah, I haven't traveled yet, and I'm a little concerned about it because I used to travel a lot, and I can just picture myself trying to get through there. I don't. I'm not looking forward to that.
Well, a
Anyway,
lot of the travel I use shorts.
yeah,
I want to show people my medal. It's
yeah,
like, versus it being under my pants. I mean, naturally, if it's really cold, I'm not,
yeah,
but when I go through and I know I'm going to set it off, I pull my leg up, pull my pant leg up and say, here you are. And
yeah,
then they recognize what it is, and they're more in tune to, okay, this is the type of screening that we need to have.
yeah.
But I I, I enjoy wearing shorts because I live in the Southwest, so I don't mind showing my medal, and it's just saves some controversy going through the X-rays.
Yeah, and everyday life is like that. Like, I've talked to people where they like to cover up their leg and they're almost, I don't know, I wouldn't say embarrassed, but they just don't want people to see it. I'm on the flip side. I like to show mine off. I'm actually kind of proud of it, that I'm able
Hmm.
to walk on it, right? And it strikes up conversations and things like that. Do you ever have people, come up to you and just say, how'd that happen, and how do you feel about
Absolutely.
that? Yeah,
Well, I mean, I've had kids come up and say what happened, and you be real with them. Don't
yeah,
don't sit there and they be honest, be truthful. They want to hear your story, and again, I'm not asking for any um, any sorrow or anything. I'm able to get around and do
yeah,
what I need to do to survive, and I think people need to see that
yeah,
it's going to be okay. I mean, just because that you have a prosthesis doesn't mean that it's life ending.
yeah. I love that. You've got a big heart, David. I can tell, and you've worked with some peer support groups yourself,
Mhm.
and that brings a lot of, I don't know, joy to your life. I know that I'm finding that I run a peer support group every second Sunday and virtually, and it's really, yeah. I love hearing their stories. I love talking to people and telling them that it's going to be all right, and know that they're going to be all right, and changing their perspective. What about you? Like, what's the impact that it's had on you?
Well, you and I were both in the situation of uh, we knew a little more than we did before we made the decision. Some people don't have that choice, and give them reassurance, give them hope.
Yeah,
That there's there's life after surgery. There's uh, there's life after you get your first socket.
right,
There's activities you can grow to, and set yourself some goals. Set
right.
yourself some, what did you do previously before you had your leg amputated, and what can you do in the future? You can still
Yeah,
ride a bike.
yeah,
You can still ski. You can still, I mean, you can rock climb. I mean, people on motorcycles, they get back on and go.
yeah,
So, the limits is what you limit yourself. Um, you know, and I was fortunate enough to get a my first water leg about 5 6 years ago, and I was not able to get to the ocean because of the sand.
right,
You don't want to get sand in your prosthetic, and definitely any salt water is not good
right.
for the metal. But getting a water leg and getting back out into the ocean was fun.
Yeah,
And so you think you'd never miss, but
yeah.
just it's the small things.
You think you never do that again, and there you are doing it, right? There's um
Hmm.
there's a young guy our way. I'm in Toronto. He's north of Toronto, but he was a windsurfer. He was very good at it, and this was just on the news not too long ago. But believe it or not, he was windsurfing down south, and he felt something nudge him on the side. He looked down and it was a great white short shark. And the
Oh,
great white shark actually bit his leg off. And he had to like kick it and kick it to try to get away from it. He eventually did, But the point of my story is, I mean, that's a horrible story, an awful way to lose a leg. But he almost died. They got him up to the beach, had to tie his leg and save him and whatnot. But the point was is that he's now back windsurfing with his prosthetic, and he's like jumping in the air and just doing all kinds of stunts. It's just absolutely amazing, especially when you're younger. You can really recover, right?
Hmm. Yeah,
And
you can.
live the life that you wanted to again. Now, you told me a story that made me laugh. It was a football game that you went to, and your leg nearly fell off, so you had to kind of do a bit of a MacGyver. Tell me about that.
Yes. Well, I wanted to go to a football game, and it was at the college ASU. So we took the light rail, um, for easy because it goes right up to the stadium, and got a good seat. Enjoyed the game. I was headed to get a beverage, and I was walking down the stairs and felt my leg coming from almost underneath me. And I looked and I was able to lift my leg out of my prosthetic, and I'm a pin. So
Yeah.
the pin collapsed in the locking mechanism. So okay, I fell, and then people got me up,
Yeah.
and then they got me to the top level, got me on a golf cart. I was able to you know at least get me out of the stadium okay. But then I had to think, okay, I need to be able to get to a light rail, and from the light rail station, I need to get to my car.
Uh-huh.
So, and I got to keep this leg on. So I had a belt on, so I took my belt off, put it around the bottom of the socket, and was able to hold on to the leg and keep my leg in it while I was trying to walk. So, imagine this guy at about 11:30 at night trying to cross the street
Yeah.
in a to the light rail, just hopping along. You know, it was comical at the time, but it
I,
was one of those things you got to think out of the box.
yeah, well, I'm sure I can just picture it. So that's why I'm chuckling here. But um yeah, I'm glad you thought of that. Like how would you do that? Like you don't plan for something like that when you go out to the
No,
stadium or out to see friends or whatever. You're in a restaurant, something happens and you have to kind of think on your feet, like how could I get out of this situation, right? You've been well, you're familiar with the Amputee Coalition and you've gone to the events over the year, and it'd be worthwhile mentioning what the value is to those conventions just on the call here today, because I think that's like the number one place for amputees to go and learn and whatnot. So talk to me about what the value you see in those events.
well, one of the first ones I went to, I had a coach from University of Miami that taught us to run in your prosthetic, and they called it first run. So it's like you're in a large uh, well, I guess it was a large conference room, and it was awesome. So they give you, how do you do this? What do you do it? What's your mechanism? And everybody does it differently.
Sure.
Um, but they had first golf, first swim. But you're able to connect and network with people that you can relate to. You know,
Yeah.
hey, I see you got this type of prosthetic. How does that work? Do you like the vacuum? Do you like the pin? Do you
Yeah.
like the suspension? Um, they have trade shows where you can go talk uh, to all the manufacturers and get to see what are those products that are out there.
Right.
There's psychologists, there's yoga specialists, there's folks that uh, they have a veterans group that does a roundtable.
Oh, okay.
So there's many different facets of looking at the agenda and then being able to what would serve you best, educational wise or knowledge wise. Some of it's new technology, some of it's they have mechanical hands out there. It's not just legs; it's all limbs.
Yeah.
And what those prosthetics look like. And then at the end of the conference, they usually have a dinner and a dance.
Okay.
So having fun out there, dancing with my wife, and there's other people with the same, limb differences I have,
Yeah.
and they're enjoying life.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. That sounds, yeah, I can't wait to go. I mean, this will be the first year that I go in January, well, next year. But I'm really looking forward to it. One thing that I find is that, and you mentioned this earlier, people don't tend to know, like they can't relate to some of the, phantom pain. They can't relate to, what it's like to, drop your leg and not be able to put it back on. They can't relate to the pain that maybe you get from a wound or something that the socket's causing. And so I find talking to people at those conventions and talking, on support groups like this is really helpful, to do that. Now, you mentioned I have a prosthesis.
Prosthetist,
I can never say that. I don't know why.
prosthetist, yeah.
Still learning it, but mine is not an amputee. So she's very good and whatnot, but you're lucky yours is an amputee. And how has that made a difference for you in your care?
You know, I've had one. I had two different prosthetists that were not amputees. And then this gentleman I'm seeing now is a below the knee amputee like myself. And when I tell him, well, I'm having this pain or I'm feeling I'm my foot, I'm riding over my foot, it's pushing me too far forward. He understands what that means and can understand what are the steps it takes to
Correct it.
correct or modify or let's look at the list of what corrections or modifications we need to make or adjustments to overcome that.
Yeah.
Some of the uh, I had one process where they did a computer image to make the socket uh, versus using plaster of Paris,
Yeah.
and they couldn't get it right.
Mhm.
It was terribly fit, and that made my decision pretty easy to move away from them. But
Yeah.
um, you know,
Yeah.
Seth does it old school where it's he'll use it, the 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 stuff you make your cast from,
Yep.
and does a live cast, and he makes the sockets with his technician.
Yeah.
So any modifications you need or adjustments later on after the fact,
Yeah.
you know, he understands it, he gets it.
So you have a bit of a different lifestyle than some people. I mean, you're playing golf, you're swimming, you're bike riding. What kind of prosthetic do you have that kind of suits you right now? What are you using? I know you said that.
I have an Echelon VT, which is it's made by Blanchard,
Okay.
and it has a rotation suspension and a shock absorber, so it provides especially when you're going incline, if you're going up a hill or going up steps,
Yeah.
it provides some easier motion, so you can ride through the process on your leg.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you mentioned this earlier. You were saying it's really important to set goals. And
Mhm.
mine asked me, what's your goal, Kevin? And I said, well, I used to golf 3, 4 times a week before this happened, and I'd like to get back to golfing. So that's my goal right now is by the end of summer, I hope to get Well, at least on the driving range and swinging the club, right? But I'd really like to get out on the course again. So I was really happy to hear that you're doing it and golfing and whatnot. But the prosthetic matters, apparently, depending on what kind of foot you get, and they move
Hmm.
on the grass better than other ones and things like that. So really important to set those goals and make sure that they know about it.
Yeah, communicating what you want to do
Yeah.
is important to how that prosthetist makes a decision to provide you with options for your foot.
Yeah.
Um, if you know, I, over this past trip in Italy, we visited Pompeii in Sicily. Now, there's no even streets. There are big
Oh,
cobblestone,
yeah.
steps and inclines and hills and gullies.
Yeah.
I pushed right through it. You go at your own pace, but again, it's an obstacle that I endured and did well.
Yeah. Any falls or any close falls, close calls?
No,
Oh,
no falls.
that's good to hear.
Now, if you are going to travel, um, and this is something that I would suggest, I purchased a walking cane that actually has a seat.
Oh,
So if I get to a point where, okay, it's, I have some hip problems, if I'm walking too long. So, I can actually utilize the cane to just take a breather and sit for 4 or 5 minutes and let that stress go off my lower back and then get back up and go.
yeah. That's where it gets me too, in the lower back.
Yeah.
Every time. I guess it's just that's the way it is. The core muscle has to really build up for you to
Hmm.
be able to walk that. Now I keep mentioning this, you golf, you swim, you bike, all these activities that you do, David, how has that helped you? Well, obviously physically that helps you, but how has that helped you from a mental state?
I'm not sedentary. I'm still active. You
Yeah.
know, I'll turn 68 this year, and I'm, this is since 2011, so I'm not even into this for 20 years yet. But uh, I look at it as you got to keep moving
Yeah.
and keep active as much as possible. And once you get sedentary, that becomes the a bigger challenge. You can actually swell more,
Yeah.
and that's not good for any socket. Is having swelling. So you want to be able to keep your weight the best you can and stay active. It
Yeah.
helps your mental state, and your mental state drives what you do physically.
Yeah, we talked a little bit earlier about, that tipping point and, keep going. You can sit in the wheelchair, and if you stay in the wheelchair, you're gonna always be in the wheelchair.
Yeah.
So get out of the wheelchair. That's my advice to people, right? And if you want to
Correct.
learn how to walk, get up and walk. And that's the real important thing. But I think that was one of the things that really helped me in the last, year or so in my recovery is that I didn't prior to this all happening to me, I wasn't a real active guy, like in terms of going to the gym or working out. I rode bikes, I played golf, I did all those types of things, but the body was not fit, let's put it that way. But ever
Yeah.
since this has happened, it's changed my perspective, and I work out every day, I feel way better. There's a lot of good things that come out of this that you may never have realized if this didn't happen to you.
Well, I mean, the 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 endorphins that you create when you get physical helps your helps your mental state.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So if you walked into a room, David, right now, somebody, you know, is getting ready for surgery or they've just had surgery, they're, you know, kind of a little overwhelmed or feeling isolated, what would you say to them?
Your life's not over. It's just beginning. This is going to be a different chapter. Um, you can recover, you can bounce back, but it takes a lot of willpower.
Yeah. Yeah, good, good. Um, Anything that you wished you would have known earlier in the process? Maybe years before your amputation, what would you have done differently?
I should have had my amputation sooner. I
Yeah,
mean, it's clearly if I had more knowledge and did the research, I should have had it done sooner because of
yeah,
the technology's there. People think of they go back to, well, you're just going to get a wooden leg. Well, you're not going to get a wooden leg. The prosthetics out today they're high tech. Um, there's many different varieties.
yeah,
There are there's accomplishments that they've done through the years to make your life easier. But you got to have the willpower to want that.
yeah. That's funny you mentioned the white wooden leg guy. I actually knew a guy that had a wooden leg. I was in high school. I mean, we're going back 30 years now. And he was my he taught drafting. And during a test you'd be kind of working away and concentrating, and all of a sudden you'd hear this reek 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 reek. It was him swinging his leg up there, and we'd say, can you stop that? His name was Mr. Twitty. I remember him. I said, just stop that, we're trying to concentrate. And all of a sudden you'd hear the thump. He'd drop his wooden leg on the floor. But anyway, yeah, so we've come a long ways from those wooden legs to good prosthetics. What are you looking forward to in the next chapter, David, for your life?
Um, you know, my wife will probably retire and join me in retirement here in a year and a half. Then we're going to spend some time on the road, uh, seeing. We're trying to take care of the outlying countries that we want to see, but we'd like to just travel the United States and see family, uh,
Yeah,
get to know the land that we live in,
yeah.
and haven't seen.
Well, if you ever make it north in the States, don't hesitate to cross over the border here in Canada and visit us up here.
Okay, we know there's some challenges with that,
Yeah, yeah. No,
but
we'll welcome you guys here anytime. Absolutely.
perfect.
Yeah. Well, listen,
Love
David.
that Canadian attitude.
Yeah. Listen, David, I really appreciate today, the time you spent, and I wish you all the best in your journey. I hope you keep in touch. Um, yeah, really good to get to know you and talk to you today.
Oh, we'll look forward to seeing what we can do about Vegas.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
We'll meet in
a
Vegas.
fun time.
Yeah. Yeah. Whatever we do in Vegas, we'll have to stay in Vegas, as they
We're gonna
say.
stay in Vegas. There you go.
All right, David. Thanks again. Have a great
Perfect.
day.
You too. Thanks for the time.
David, your story is a testament to perseverance, reflection, and growth. You've been through so much, from trauma to tough decisions to building a life full of purpose, humor, and connection. I know our listeners will take away not only inspiration, but some real tools and perspective from hearing your story today. If you've enjoyed this episode of The Next Step, be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share this with somebody who might benefit from hearing it. You can follow our work at Limb Loss Connection on Facebook and Instagram, or visit limblostconnection.com to join our virtual support group and find helpful resources. And remember, every step forward, no matter how small, is worth celebrating. Thanks for listening today. We'll see you next time on The Next Step. David, your story is a testament to perseverance, reflection, and growth. You've been through so much, from trauma to tough decisions to building a life full of purpose, humor, and connection. I know our listeners will take away not only inspiration, but some real tools and perspective from hearing your story today. If you've enjoyed this episode of The Next Step, be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share this with somebody who might benefit from hearing it. You can follow our work at Limb Loss Connection on Facebook and Instagram, or visit limblostconnection.com to join our virtual support group and find helpful resources. And remember, every step forward, no matter how small, is worth celebrating. Thanks for listening today. We'll see you next time on The Next Step.